was the worst day of my life. Never had that feeling before. And I never want to feel like that again.
For most of the world, Katherine Jackson was the calm shadow behind a global phenomenon, the mother who stayed silent while history unfolded around her. But what if that silence was hiding a lifetime of heartbreak? In her later years, the woman Michael Jackson trusted with everything faced exile from her own home, devastating legal wars, and accusations that tore her family apart. How did the matriarch who held the Jacksons together end up living a life marked by fear, loss, and unanswered questions? This is the story few dared to look at closely, and once you do, Katherine Jackson's tragedy becomes impossible to ignore. Katherine Jackson was born Kattie B. Screws on May 4, 1930, in Clayton, Alabama, to Prince Albert and Martha Screws. Her early childhood was marked by hardship long before fame entered her life. As a young girl, she contracted polio, an illness that left her with a permanent limp, something she would quietly carry with her for the rest of her life, rarely speaking about the pain it caused, physical or emotional. When she was just 4 years old, her father changed the family's surname from Screws to Screws, and she became Katherine Esther Screws. Eventually, the family relocated north to East Chicago, Indiana, searching for stability and opportunity. Katherine attended Washington High School, where she showed an early love for music and became a member of the school band, an interest that would later shape the destiny of her entire family. It was in East Chicago that Katherine met Joseph "Joe" Jackson, a fellow local and aspiring musician, at a party. According to the New York Times, Joe was in the process of ending his first marriage when the two began seeing each other. Their relationship moved quickly, and they married on November 5, 1949. Soon after, the couple purchased a modest home at 2300 Jackson Street in Gary, Indiana, a small house that would later become legendary. Though Katherine and Joe remained legally married for nearly 7 decades, their union was far from easy. In March 1973, Katherine filed for divorce, only to withdraw the papers. Behind the scenes, Joe was reportedly involved in a 25-year affair with another woman, Cheryl Terrell, who gave birth to his daughter Giovanni Jackson in 1974. The revelation placed an enormous emotional burden on Katherine, yet she stayed. She filed for divorce again in 1982, but once more rescinded the filing. Despite persistent rumors of estrangement, Katherine and Joe remained married until his death on June 27, 2018, from terminal pancreatic cancer. In a rare joint statement following his passing, the family acknowledged the complicated legacy he left behind, one built on sacrifice, success, and deep personal cost. Through it all, Katherine endured quietly, holding her family together even when her own heart was breaking. A mom of 10. For Katherine Jackson, motherhood was never secondary to fame, money, or legacy. It was the core of who she was. As the mother of 10 children, she believed that raising them was the most important responsibility of her life. In a 2011 interview with CNN, Katherine explained that a mother must be fully present, emotionally and physically, knowing where her children are and standing firm in discipline. To her, consistency mattered. A yes had to mean yes, and a no had to mean no. She saw the mother as the unseen force that holds a family together, the glue that keeps everything from falling apart. Her first child, Maureen Rylette Rebby Jackson, was born on May 29, 1950. Rebby grew into a quiet but steady presence within the family, later releasing 4 studio albums and building a life centered on family. She became a mother to 3 children, Stacy, Yashi, and Austin, and remained deeply devoted to them. Her personal life was marked by loss when her husband of many years, Nathaniel Brown, died of cancer on January 6, 2013. Next came Sigmund Esco Jackie Jackson, born May 4, 1951, one of the original members of the Jackson 5. Jackie later settled into a more private life and now resides in Las Vegas with his third wife, Emily Besselink, and their twin sons, born in 2013. Toriano Adaril. Tito Jackson, born October 15, 1953, also rose to fame as part of the Jackson 5 and later the Jacksons. While his career found renewed momentum with a solo breakthrough in 2003, his personal life carried tragedy. He and his former wife, Dee Dee Martis, had 3 sons, Taj, Terrell, and TJ, before divorcing. Martis was later found dead in a swimming pool in 1994, and a man was convicted of her murder. Jermaine Lejeune. Jackson, born December 11, 1954, was both a singer and songwriter and remained a key member of the Jackson 5. Married 3 times and the father of 7 children, Jermaine shared a particularly close bond with his brother Michael, whose death in 2009 deeply affected him. LaToya Yvonne Jackson, born May 29, 1956, forged her own path as a singer, songwriter, and actress. Over the years, she released 9 studio albums and became one of the most outspoken and independent voices in the family. Marlon David Jackson, born March 12, 1957, was known for his electrifying dance style and earned the nickname the Dancing Machine. He married his teenage sweetheart, Carol Ann Parker, and together they raised 3 children, Valencia, Brittany, and Marlon Jr. On March 12, 1957, she gave birth to Brandon Jackson, Marlon's twin. Brandon died just 1 day after his birth, a tragedy that quietly shaped Katherine's understanding of motherhood and grief. The loss remained a deeply personal sorrow, rarely discussed publicly, but it underscored the fragility that existed alongside the family's later fame. Less than 2 years later, on August 29, 1958, Katherine welcomed Michael Joseph Jackson, a child who would grow into one of the most influential entertainers in history. Known worldwide as the King of Pop, Michael redefined popular music, performance, and celebrity itself. His record sales reached unprecedented heights, peaking with Thriller in 1982, which remains the best-selling album of all time. While his ventures into film, such as his role as the Scarecrow in The Wiz, 1978, were met with mixed reactions, his true genius flourished in the visual language of music videos, where he set standards that reshaped the industry. Michael's life was defined by both immense success and intense pressure, and his death on June 25, 2009, devastated Katherine and the entire family. In 1961, Katherine gave birth to Stephen Randall "Randy" Jackson, who later became a member of the Jacksons. Randy contributed musically to the family's legacy, but his adult life was not without hardship. He faced personal struggles involving his former wife, Eliza Shaffey, and financial turmoil that led him to file for bankruptcy in 1996. Years later, he pleaded guilty to bankruptcy fraud, a painful chapter that contrasted sharply with the family's public image of wealth and success. The youngest of Katherine's children, Janet Demita Jo Jackson, was born on May 16, 1966. Over time, Janet emerged as a powerhouse in her own right, an accomplished singer, songwriter, dancer, and actress whose career stood independently of her famous surname. She released 11 studio albums, each reflecting her evolution as an artist. After a 7-year hiatus, she returned in 2015 with Unbreakable, reaffirming her resilience and relevance. In January 2017, Janet entered a new chapter of life when she became a mother at age 50, welcoming her son, Isa Almana. She encouraged Michael's love of singing. While Joseph Jackson was relentless in pushing the family toward recognition and success, Michael Jackson would later make it clear that his deepest inspiration came from his mother. Katherine's influence, he believed, was not just emotional, but spiritual and artistic. Though she never had the opportunity to fully perform for audiences herself, largely due to health challenges stemming from childhood polio, Michael saw his own talent as a continuation of a dream she was never able to live out publicly. In his 1988 autobiography, Moonwalk, Michael wrote that his mother never viewed her illness as a punishment. Instead, she saw it as a test of faith. He recalled that Katherine taught him to believe that talent was divine in nature, something entrusted by God rather than owned outright. To her, singing and dancing were no different from the beauty of nature itself, gifts meant to be respected, nurtured, and shared. That belief stayed with Michael throughout his life and became central to how he understood fame, pressure, and responsibility. Michael also remembered a moment backstage in 1970, after the Jackson 5 performed on The Ed Sullivan Show. Ed Sullivan reportedly told him never to forget where his talent came from and reminded him that it was a gift from God. While the young performer appreciated the sentiment, he later reflected that his mother had been teaching him that lesson long before anyone else ever said it out loud. Katherine's voice, not the applause, was the one that shaped his understanding of purpose. It was also Katherine who persuaded Joe to allow Michael to officially join the group in its early days, first as a backup singer and bongo player. That quiet intervention would alter music history forever. The bond between mother and son was shattered in 2009 when Michael died at age 50 from acute propofol and benzodiazepine intoxication, leading to cardiac arrest. His death was later ruled a homicide, and his personal physician, Conrad Murray, was charged with involuntary manslaughter. Murray admitted to administering propofol to treat Michael's chronic insomnia and was convicted in 2011, receiving a 4-year prison sentence before being released on parole in 2013. In the aftermath, Katherine, along with Michael's children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against AEG Live, alleging negligence in the hiring and oversight of Murray. In October 2013, a jury ruled in favor of AEG, closing a painful legal chapter, but not the grief that followed. She was granted temporary guardianship of her son, Michael's 3 children after his death, and currently shares custody with her grandson, TJ. In the days following Michael Jackson's death, the question of who would care for his 3 children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket, quickly became both urgent and deeply emotional. Katherine Jackson, their grandmother and the steady presence Michael had trusted most, was granted temporary guardianship, despite the fact that Debbie Rowe, the biological mother of Prince and Paris, also sought custody. Ultimately, Katherine and Rowe reached an agreement that allowed Rowe supervised visitation, while Katherine assumed primary responsibility for raising the children. For a time, Katherine became the anchor of their world, providing stability amid grief, global scrutiny, and mounting legal pressure. But in 2012, that stability was suddenly shaken when reports surfaced claiming that Katherine Jackson had gone missing. The headlines spread rapidly, triggering fear and confusion, especially for the children who worried they were being deliberately kept from communicating with their grandmother. It later emerged that Katherine had simply traveled to Arizona, but the damage had already been done. A judge temporarily suspended her guardianship until her whereabouts were confirmed. The situation was further complicated by internal family conflict. Katherine's brief absence came shortly after a dispute between her and several Jackson family members, including Janet Jackson, over the validity of Michael's will and the conduct of the estate's executors. Amid the tension, Katherine's nephew, TJ Jackson, was appointed temporary guardian to ensure continuity of care. Within a week, Katherine's primary guardianship was restored, with TJ remaining as co-guardian. At the time, Judge Mitchell Beckloff emphasized that the children were thriving, noting that they were deeply bonded to both Katherine and TJ, and praised the care they were receiving. In 2014, Debbie Rowe once again raised concerns, reportedly considering a bid for full custody, believing the children were not being properly cared for. However, no court ever granted her custody or co-guardianship. As the years passed and the children grew older, Katherine gradually stepped back. In November, she formally resigned as co-guardian of Blanket, leaving T.J. Jackson as his sole guardian. By then, Prince and Paris were already adults. Court documents cited Katherine's age and her belief that T.J. was fully capable of handling all responsibilities, marking the quiet end of a guardianship shaped by love, scrutiny, and extraordinary circumstances. Many people have thought her marriage to Joe Jackson had been estranged. In the years leading up to Joe Jackson's death, speculation about the state of his marriage to Katherine Jackson became a constant feature of tabloid headlines. Reports repeatedly claimed that the couple, married for more than 6 decades, had quietly drifted apart. In 2010, the Daily Mail even suggested that the two had separated entirely. The reality, however, was far more complicated than the rumors implied. While Joe and Katherine had been living in different states for several years, Joe primarily in Las Vegas and Katherine based in Los Angeles, Katherine consistently maintained that their marriage had not ended. Distance, she explained, did not mean abandonment. In interviews around 2011, she emphasized that they remained emotionally connected and made regular efforts to see one another. According to Katherine, their arrangement was shaped more by circumstance than by estrangement. Joe lived much of the time in a Las Vegas home provided by their daughter, Janet Jackson, while Katherine continued to stay close to the rest of the family in California. Despite this, they traveled back and forth often. It was not unusual for Katherine to make the long drive across the desert to spend several days with her husband, just as Joe frequently visited Los Angeles to be with her. During court appearances related to Michael Jackson's estate, the two were often seen sitting side by side, sometimes even holding hands, quiet gestures that contradicted claims of a broken marriage. By 2014, however, reports grew more somber. The New York Post claimed that Joe had become estranged not only from Katherine, but from much of the Jackson family altogether. A source told the outlet that Joe was largely on his own, suggesting that family members had failed to check in on his well-being. While the source acknowledged that Joe remained active and continued to travel, they painted a picture of a man increasingly distant from the family he once dominated. When news broke that Joe Jackson was gravely ill with terminal cancer, rumors quickly spread that he was facing his final days alone. These claims prompted an immediate response from his son Jermaine Jackson, who took to social media to set the record straight. In a June 21st tweet, Jermaine insisted that the family was very much present and unified, writing that his mother, siblings, and relatives wanted to be with Joe for whatever time he had left, free from interference or speculation. She penned the autobiography, My Family, The Jacksons. In 1990, Katherine Jackson stepped out of the shadows of her famous children and told her own story with the release of her autobiography, My Family, The Jacksons. Co-written with author Richard Wiseman, the book offered readers a rare, intimate look inside the household that produced one of the most famous families in modern music history. Rather than focusing solely on fame and success, Katherine framed the story through a mother's eyes. She chronicled the rise of the Jackson Five, Michael Jackson's meteoric ascent to global superstardom, Janet Jackson's transformation into a chart-topping force in her own right, and even addressed controversial moments such as LaToya Jackson's decision to pose for Playboy. The book positioned Katherine not as a distant observer, but as the emotional center of a family navigating unprecedented fame. Readers were especially struck by Katherine's reflections on Michael. She described him as deeply focused and unusually determined from a young age, revealing small human details that contrasted sharply with his larger-than-life public image. One anecdote that resonated with fans involved Michael meticulously keeping his bedroom spotless for an entire year, an effort driven by discipline and self-control before eventually slipping back into his more chaotic habits. Moments like these offered glimpses of Michael as a son rather than a superstar. The book received a mixed but generally warm response. On Goodreads, it earned an average rating of 3.5 stars, with many readers praising Katherine's gentle tone and personal insights. One highly rated review from 2009 noted that the strength of the memoir lay in its quiet details. Katherine Jackson, hit with the ultimate bad news in years-long battle against Michael Jackson's estate. For Katherine Jackson, the long legal battle over her late son's estate has felt like a fight she was never destined to win. Despite her efforts to challenge the decisions made by the executors of Michael Jackson's vast fortune, a recent court ruling made it clear that the door has now closed, permanently. The dispute centered on the executors' decision to sell half of Michael Jackson's music catalog to Sony Music Group for an estimated $600 million. Katherine objected strongly, arguing that the deal was made without transparency and violated what she believed were her son's wishes. Earlier in the year, a probate court dismissed her objections, stating that her appeal had no merit and allowing the sale to proceed. Hoping for a reversal, Katherine took the fight to a higher court. But in newly filed documents, a Los Angeles appeals court upheld the original ruling, delivering a decisive victory to the estate's co-executors. The judges concluded that Michael Jackson's will granted the executors broad authority to buy and sell assets in whatever way they believed best served the estate. Crucially, the court emphasized that all proceeds from such transactions would ultimately flow into the trust established for Michael's heirs, Katherine herself and his 3 children, Paris, Prince, and Biggie. The appeals court also dismissed Katherine's claim that the sale violated the terms of Michael's will, noting that she had failed to raise that specific argument in earlier proceedings. Court records revealed that while Katherine acknowledged the executors had the legal power to sell assets, she remained the only family member or beneficiary to formally oppose the deal. In the end, the judges ruled that the transaction aligned with the will's terms, and that the probate court had acted within its discretion in approving it. Financially, the estate remains enormously powerful. Billboard estimates it generates roughly $75 million annually through master recordings, publishing rights, merchandising, and licensing deals, including revenue from MJ, the musical. Under the Sony agreement, the company will acquire most of these assets, with the exception of theatrical royalties. For Katherine Jackson, the ruling was not just a legal loss. It was a symbolic one, underscoring how little control she now has over the legacy of the son she once guided and protected. As the dust settles, Katherine Jackson's story stands as a painful reminder that even the mother of the most famous pop star in history can feel powerless in the face of legal systems, money, and legacy. Was she simply trying to protect her son's wishes,